Okie dokie. Good morning, everybody. I am live now. Once again, some techie stuff. This is our weekly Sunday morning, if you're in Australia, live Q&A. So if you're watching or have any questions to ask me, just pop them in the comments. Last week, so still working out all this techie stuff. Last week the comments didn't pop up, so I'm just going to go into make sure everyone can. I want the comments to pop up in real time. So while I'm here, my dogs go. Every time I go live, I have puppies barking. I think people who know me know that I love my dogs and it's a dog house. Well, they're going to go outside and annoy the owners, I think. Let me just check the comment section. All viewers can participate in chat. Okay, so hopefully that. I just want to make sure that. Let's have a look here. Okay, hoping that the comments are all ready to go. If you are, what's this? I don't want to press something and then it does something weird. Oh, tech, hey. What's this little thing here? I'm just looking at the comment section. I just want to make sure that everybody, okay. Oh, now where am I? Wait a tick. Let me just see what it's doing here. I'm sure you can see me, guys. I can't see me, but okay, I'm not really sure about that one. Let's just pop out of that one, hey? Okay. Okay. I think the comments are all good. Just be patient with me here for a moment while I get all this sorted. Let's just have a look here. I wonder why that just doesn't do that. Okay. I wonder. Okay. I'm just I'll wait for some people to come on, and I'll just do a little note for myself, just so I can get all this digital stuff up and going. So now I can cross post the lives. Cross post. So I'll just put a little note here. Okay. Anyway, if you see me pop in the group, practicing, seeing how we can get these lives up and going through cross posting and everything, yeah, I'll let you know. I'm doing a little practice run. My guys. So I would like to give a big welcome to all our new members in the group. Welcome. Lovely to have you in the group here. This group is an educational group and a support group for everyone who has an off-the-track thoroughbred and is wanting help with retraining their off-the-track thoroughbred and a lot of the common issues that go along with retraining an off-the-track thoroughbred. A little quick rundown. I've worked with thoroughbred racehorses in racing for 17 and a half years, and with thoroughbred racehorses after racing, so even before I went into racing, for over 20 years. I think it's going on about 23 years now, so a long time. So yeah, I love thoroughbred racehorses. I love off the track thoroughbreds. They're amazing horses. That's why I'm here. I'm very passionate about their welfare after racing, and I'm I know they're quite misunderstood, and that when all the wonderful people that take them on, like yourselves, after racing, there's not a lot of education out there, and they're not the same as other horses. They're different. They've come from a completely different environment and pretty much grown up in that environment from a very young horse. They know nothing else other than racing, so it's really important to retrain them. and to go through quite often a rehabilitation program to help them successfully transition into a life after racing in our equestrian disciplines. So yeah, that's what I'm all about. Yeah, so look, if you have any questions, pop them in the comments, and hopefully if anyone's on, pop them in the comments. Just pop a comment and let me know that you can see me and there's comments happening. I'm just not sure whether the comments are going to come up in real time. They didn't last week for some reason. So I'm just having a sip of my coffee here because I love coffee. I had a bit of a my dogs are gone. Oh no, Bailey's. There's a mouse in the house and Bailey's sitting there, waiting for the mouse. The mousey there, Squiggles. The mousey. He's got his nose stuck right. I think it's actually next door. I don't know how he's. Yeah, I think he thinks it's going to run through the boards, the skirting boards of the wall. Is there a mousey there, Squigs? He's very, very preoccupied. So yes, I had a bit of a disaster this morning. My coffee machine started dying. I was like, oh my god, I can't live without coffee. I love coffee. So yes, I wasn't very happy with that. Luckily, I knew it was on its way out, so I've actually got another one to replace the one I've got. So I'll set that up today, and I'll be all good for my coffee. So what I wanted to, I had a question from a friend of mine actually, and she is a member of the group here, Kaz, and we were talking because it's actually, she's got an off the track thoroughbred. She's got Billy off the track thoroughbred, beautiful, beautiful Bill, and Bentley the Standy. Now, she was asking me, guys, come on, doggies. Asked me about laminitis. So Bentley actually has laminitis, and yeah, it's not something that I know with off the track thoroughbreds, it's not something that they're not as prone to laminitis. You don't see it as often as you do in your ponies, your insulin resistant horses and things like that. And I found myself coming from a racing background, for so many years, being a big grain feeder and things like that. I didn't even really, this was many years ago, one of my horses, he was actually a thoroughbred cross stock horse, got laminitis. This was going back 2015, so about 6 years ago now, and 2014, 15, and really badly. He got laminitis very badly. As I said, coming from a racing background, I was always a big grain feeder, not as aware and not as knowledgeable about equine nutrition and all the issues with feeding grain and pastures and things like that as I am now. And so I wasn't aware he had laminitis. He actually, unfortunately, he also had what I thought was an abscess in his foot, which I was poulticing. But it ended up being a bit of a double whammy because I got the vet out because he was literally he was that bad. He was standing. So one of the signs of laminitis, particularly when it's bad, is they're stretched out. They sort of stretch out their front feet. They're trying and leaning on their hind end. So they're trying to take weight off their front feet, because usually laminitis is in the front feet, though with my Toby he had it in all 4 feet. So you can see they're not comfortable, that they will look lame. They are lame. If it gets quite bad, they're shifting their weight onto their hind end to take weight off their front end. They will often lie down a lot to take weight off their legs. So this was my experience with laminitis. I had never had it before. So it was a very big learning curve for me. And yeah, I learnt a lot from that. I was very close to losing Toby actually, because it was that bad. So he had laminitis in all 4 feet. He had rotation of the pedal bone in all 4 feet, and it was incredibly, it was terrible. He was in so much pain, and my vet was amazing. He came out every afternoon, and yeah, we got him through it. And unfortunately, I lost Toby in 2017 to another an accident. But we had many years, and he actually was sound. Not only that, through his laminitic period, he also had he had actually a piece of dead bone on his pedal bone as well, which was what we thought was the abscess, was actually a sequestrum, I think they call it, which is a bit of dead bone. So he had to have surgery to take that out of his his foot. So he was in my vet was amazing. My farrier was amazing. So throughout this whole period, I feel like it went on for about a year. Toby, who was also a very big 17 hand chestnut horse, and he was always a very good doer. And looking back now, the signs of him being laminitic. So you get the cresty neck. So I've been there with the laminitis, and I do know also too that thoroughbreds do get laminitis. They will often get laminitis in racing from the high starch, high grain feeds, and they will often have a low grade laminitis. So it's sort of undetected. They're a little bit footsore. It's not as, it doesn't seem to be as, I'm going to say, I'm having a mental blank with my words, diagnosed. Because, this is just from my observation. I have known of the thoroughbred racehorses who've had laminitis. It just doesn't seem to be as diagnosed as often as it probably should be in racing. I'll pick out two well-known racehorses that both passed away or were euthanized because of laminitis. So we've got Haylist. Anyone that knows a little bit about racing will know Haylist was the bridesmaid to Black Caviar. He was amazing. He was trained up on the Central Coast when I was riding up there, and I used to watch Haylist work around at Gosford Racecourse. I get goosebumps talking about him. I'm just so passionate. I love thoroughbred racehorses, and I love off the track thoroughbreds. So what a powerful horse, and what a tough horse. Big horse as well. And he had reoccurring laminitis, and he actually ended up being euthanized from laminitis. So that's a racehorse. He was always running second to Black Caviar. So what a trooper. Incredible horse. So he was euthanized. I don't know what year, but it was after the Black Caviar era. He probably not long after, actually, but he did get euthanized from laminitis. And another horse, a mare, a filly, called Miss Vista. You probably won't know her as much. She was just this baldy, white-faced, beautiful filly. She was only 3, actually, so she was only very young. Don't take my word for it, but I'm pretty sure she was only 3, and she was also euthanized from laminitis as well. So there's two very well-known racehorses that had laminitis and are no longer around. So it is an issue. There's an issue. Oh, my dogs. Come on, guys. Sorry, guys. There's always dogs in my lives here. They run the house. If you're on and you can pop a comment in, just let me know, just so I can see the comments. Now, if you, hopefully the comments are going to come up. If you put in a comment and I don't answer you, it's because it hasn't come up. So I will definitely get back to you when the live finishes. And then if it doesn't come up, I know it didn't come up last week until after the live. I will work out why that's not happening. But I'll just make sure now. So it should come up. You should be able to participate in this live and chat. So let's see. Fingers crossed, guys. Anyway, I'll go back to the laminitis because I know that if you're in Australia, the Southern Hemisphere, down in Australia, we're in our springtime and we've got so much spring grass. And this is the time for laminitis and also other issues as well. So let's look at laminitis. So off the track thoroughbreds can get laminitis. And one of the signs, so I've got a herd of 20 horses, 18 off the track thoroughbreds. One is a client's horse. And I have some off the track thoroughbreds. So I've got a riding pony and toothless. So they're definitely prone to, having reactions, having issues with the very lush green pasture. So one of the causes of laminitis is your lush green pasture, your high sugar grasses. In springtime, your grasses have a lot more sugar and starch in them, and this is what's going to create laminitis and other issues like metabolic issues. So we're looking at laminitis today, so I'll stick to the laminitis path because otherwise I'll get a little bit too scientific for myself as well as you guys, and I'll have to go and research some things. But with my horses, for instance, there's particular, other than my riding pony and Toothless, the paint horse, that need to come off the grass. They're not foundering, so they haven't got laminitis. But what I do is, and particularly as it's starting to get so lush and green now, as I bring them off the grass of a daytime, or you can bring them off the grass of a nighttime. I know there's certain periods of the day and night where the grasses have a lot more sugars in them. I think it's in the, I'm not exactly sure of the times because there is a little bit of sorry, I had a message come through. I thought it was one of you guys that came through on the phone. I don't know why sorry, I'm getting, here we go. Open up the comments. There we go. Got it open. So I look at how they're handling it. So some of the signs that your horse may be reacting to the lush spring grass, or other feeds such as a high grain diet and things like that, is they get the cresty neck. So you'll find, first of all, around down their neck, down their mane, you'll find that it actually goes quite rock hard. Now this is where they're accumulating water. It's accumulation. It's actually supposed to be an accumulation of water in there more than what some people think of as fat. It feels like fat, but they're cresty. They get very cresty in their neck, and it's very hard. It's like you feel around their mane. It should be nice and floppy. Well, not really floppy, because actually that's another sign of issues when it actually hangs to one side. Little ponies, you'll quite often see this really cresty neck that'll even fall to one side. But you'll find that they get quite rock solid hard in their crest, down where their mane is. Another sign is they can get sort of like, it looks a little bit like cellulite on their body. So you look like a little bit like lumps of fat. They're obviously, another one would be if they're overweight, and too fat is not good in any horse. When it comes to particularly having issues where the sugars are too high and they're not metabolizing properly, the cresty neck is one of them. I also, too, another one, and this is something that I didn't know to quite later on, is you look underneath their jaw and they tend to get quite, now I don't know exactly the reason I saw this, and then it's something to do with also holding fluids and their body not metabolizing properly. Without me being a vet, is they get quite lumpy. You see under their gullet, they get these pockets. They get more lumpy underneath there, like little fluids, pockets of fluid or something like that. So these are signs that, and quite often I see these in some of my horses through the springtime and through once the lush grass comes up. So it's really just being aware. Once again, I'm very big on observing your horses, watching their daily habits, watching any change in them physically, behavior-wise, and things like that. So these are signs that quite often will come up on the spring grass, when the spring grass comes up. Why spring grass an issue? First of all, it gets high in your non-structural carbohydrates. So feeds, carbohydrates, when it comes to horses' feed, are made up of structural carbohydrates and non-structural carbohydrates. And this is in all feeds. So your structural carbohydrates are the good ones. They're your fiber, your forage, so they're low sugar and low starch. And your non-structural carbohydrates are your the non-structural carbohydrates are your starch and sugar levels, basically. And your structural carbohydrates are your fiber. So when it comes to feeding, so for instance, we're looking at pasture. The pasture in springtime, when the lush green grass is usually very high in non-structural carbohydrates, so your starch and sugar levels are very high, way too much for the horse to be able to metabolize. So what happens is it gets quite scientific, and I don't, I find it hard to explain it all very scientific, but basically what happens is the glucose in the horse's bloodstream the glucose gets absorbed into the bloodstream, and then it goes into all the cells like your liver and your muscles and all of that. So what happens is there's too much glucose in the horse's bloodstream, and it can't get absorbed. There's too much, it can't get absorbed into the appropriate places like your liver and other tissues, cell tissues and things like that. Also, too, so then the horse releases more insulin to try and balance out the sugar levels, the glucose levels in the blood. So then it's creating more insulin in the bloodstream, which causes problems. So this is what they call insulin resistance, which is like a metabolic issues when it comes to your metabolic diseases. I know Cushing's is a metabolic disease. There's a lot of them. I'm not right up to date with it all. Once again, being an off the track thoroughbred person, it doesn't seem to be as common, but it is an issue, and I'm learning a lot more as I go along, particularly with my horse Toby when he had laminitis. So really important to be aware of this laminitis. So we've got so what happens then, another reason for laminitis, not only your spring grasses and the high levels of sugars, the glucose in the bloodstream, you've got high starch. This is where it's an issue with your high grain, high starch diets. Horses are not designed to eat your grainy, high starch diets. They're designed to eat long stem forages. So what happens is any grains or starches are supposed to be digested in your small intestine, in the small intestine of the horse. The food goes through very fast through the stomach and the small intestine of the horse into the hindgut. Now, any grain and starches that aren't digested in the small intestine end up going undigested into the hindgut, your large intestine. Now, this is where problems come, and once again, laminitis can be one of the consequences of this, because the undigested grains, they aren't digested in the hindgut. This is where your fiber is supposed to be, your long stem forages are fermented. So it turns the undigested grains, without getting all over techie here, turns the hindgut environment into an acidic environment. So like our stomach, we have our good bacteria and what happens if we don't eat right, our bad bacteria. The horse has the same thing. So the good bacteria in the hindgut die off, and the bad bacteria overtake it, and cause drop the pH level down to an acidic environment. Now, this absorbs into the large intestines walls, into the bloodstream, and once again, it's in the bloodstream where inflammation happens. The inflammation causes all sorts of issues, if it's by high grain diet or by green lush pasture, very high in starches and sugars, causes inflammation in the horse from the bloodstream, and this goes down to their feet is one of the issues, which is laminitis. So laminitis is an inflammatory response to inflammation. So the inflammation in the bloodstream, the blood goes down into the horse's feet. And what happens is it causes inflammation where the laminae, the sensitive and insensitive laminae, so the laminae is what holds the hoof, your hoof, to the pedal bone, to the structure of your hoof structure. Now that starts to become inflamed and it starts to separate. So you can imagine how painful that is for the horse. And that's when you get signs of them being sore. They might be shifting from one foot to the other, not wanting to weight bear. Once again, once they start to get quite bad in their laminitis, they start to shift their weight back onto their hind end and have their front legs stretched out. So you can imagine how painful it is when the hoof wall is basically coming away from the pedal bone, so losing its structure. And because of that, that's where you start to get what they call rotation of the pedal bone. So the pedal bone will start to come away from the hoof wall and separate and rotate down towards the sole of the horse. So, for instance, my Toby had rotation in all 4 feet, really bad. The poor bugger, and I'm just, it was amazing getting him through it. He's such a tough horse, and it was a big learning curve for me, and hence a very big change in the way I feed horses from then on in. I'm not a grain feeder at all. I don't feed grain to any of my horses. I'm not saying don't feed grain, but be very careful when feeding grain. There's some wonderful sites like FeedXL and Nerida Richards, which is an incredible site. I'm on FeedXL. I'm a member of the Nutrition Calculator. Wonderful site where you can get so much information on diet-related information for your horse and support. It's fantastic. So highly recommend Feed XL as just a little, I'm not an equine nutritionist. I'm very passionate about everything to do with horses and off the track thoroughbreds, particularly, always learning, and Feed XL is one of my sites. So if you have a question to ask me and I don't know it, I'll go and research it for you and find out whether it's in our Q&As or in the group. Just pop up a comment in the group, and I'll get out there and help you. Anything, just pop anything. If I can't help you, I'll find someone who can help you. So that was, so just going back to the laminitis. So that's what laminitis is. Foundering is, now don't take my word for it, but I'm pretty sure foundering is when the laminitis is active and they're starting to get rotation of the pedal bone. So what do? We've got our horse with laminitis. We know what's caused it. Also stress can cause it as well. There's quite a few things that can cause laminitis: stress, illnesses, other areas can cause laminitis as well. So your horse has laminitis, and we're going to presume it's diet related, particularly at this time if you're in Australia, the lush spring grass. Get your horse off. Now, I'm not a vet, so I always recommend go to your vet, get a vet out straight away, and have have your horse under veterinary treatment and listen to your vet. With my experience and with what I've learned, you remove your horse off the pasture. You don't want them to be consuming any more high starch, your high sugar grasses or any feed like that. Especially if they're active in their laminitis. As signs, another thing to be able to see other than the physical symptoms of them being uncomfortable in the way that they're standing is you'll feel a lot of heat in their hooves. So if you put your hands on their hooves, you will feel heat come from their hooves. You'll feel a digital pulse. So going down, so feeling along the veins or arteries, so you'll feel where the pulse is. If you run your horse, your hands down the outside of their legs, you'll feel that vein that goes in between the back of your horse's fetlock, the tendon. So you've got the flexor tendon. I should do a little video on this. If you want a video, let me know, and I'll demonstrate how to feel the pulse of your horses on your horse's legs. So your flexor tendon is at the back of your horse's lower legs under the knee, and it runs down to the back to the fetlock and then branches off. Your suspensory ligament is the very hard ligament that runs down onto the outside of your leg. So you get a vein that comes down in between the flexor tendon and the suspensory ligament on the outside of your horse's, just so for your horse's front legs, for example. And that is, if you put your fingers, I use, my two fingers here to feel for a pulse. You will feel, if you feel, it's like us, the doctors will feel your pulse. You find a vein and you feel the pulse. Okay, so that's where you feel the pulse on the horse's legs. You'll feel a pounding pulse if they've got laminitis and they're active. You'll feel this pounding pulse. So that's another way to check if you've got laminitis, and if there's, and also too, if you have abscesses, you can tell if a horse has some issue happening, lamenesses, by feeling the pulse. So now going to what do? We remove the horse off grain, pasture, everything. Now this is, as I said, I'm not a vet. Listen to your vet. You don't want to be consuming any high starch, high carbohydrate, sugary foods. So with Toby, for instance, he was very bad. I removed him completely off any grass, any feeds, anything like that. Now what I did, and this is what I was told from my vet, the safest feed for a laminitic horse, other than you can get your low sugar hays like your Rhodes and your turf and things like that. Toby was so bad, what I did is soaked lucerne hay. So soaked lucerne hay, it was by far the safest for Toby, and what I was recommended by my vet. What soaking does is, I used to get big slow feeder hay nets. I had them rotating like non-stop. He was in a dirt yard, and I was lucky to actually have dirt. He was too sore. He was in a small dirt yard until he started to improve, and then I had a good dirt area where I increased it. So I soaked my lucerne hay I used to soak it all day actually, unless it was really hot. But overnight, I would soak my lucerne hay overnight in big garbage bins, like your garbage bins. He was a big horse, so I used to put just big, like 4 big biscuits of loosened hay in a slow feeder hay net, soak it, or you soak it for a minimum. I used to soak it for a minimum of 30 minutes to an hour. Take it out, drain it, and give it to him. So what does the soaking do? The soaking removes the sugars, most of the sugars from the hay, and the starches. It also removes it's a very low sugar, low carbohydrate alternative, and very safe as long as you soak it well. You want to make sure you drain it really well, so none of the high sugar water is left on the hay, and you can even rinse it. Like I used to get the hose and rinse it down, hose it down and drain it again for Toby. That's what I did. What soaking does when you're soaking hay, it also removes nutrients. So you want to make sure that you're giving your horse a very good supplement, vitamin and mineral supplement to replace any of the lost nutrients that you do from soaking hay. Once again, always take the advice of your vet, but I removed, and you don't feed any grain or anything like that to a horse that has laminitis or even prone to laminitis. So remove all grains. Once the horse, Toby was just on soaked loosened hay. And then once he started to settle down, I would just mix up a little bit of Speedy Beet. Lupins are, once they're not active anymore, lupins are a really good non-grain. It's low starch, low sugar feed. Lucin is apparently one of the safest feeds, hays and feeds you can feed a horse that's prone to laminitis. But once again, take the advice from your vet, because different hays can test differently. You get your low sugar hays that are very popular now. Your Rhodes hay is very good. Your Teff hay. You want to avoid any of the cereal grain hays, so avoid rye hay. You avoid your oaten chaff, your oaten hays, your wheaten chaff, your wheaten hays, all of that. You want to avoid all of that. They're cereal hays. They're high in starch and high in sugars. So your carbohydrates are very high. So avoid all your grains. Avoid your barleys, your oats, your corn. Well, you wouldn't feed a horse corn unless they're a racehorse or an eventer or something like that. Personally, that's me, because it's very high carbohydrate and high dense energy. So keep a very clean, very low starch, low NS, your non-structural carbohydrates, NSC diet. I like a clean diet. If you're buying prepackaged feeds, look at what is in them. Quite often, especially overseas, I've noticed in the United States, they're very misleading, some of these feeds. They will have the non-structural carbohydrate level. So I know, for instance, you can get a really good feed for laminitic horses called High Gain Zero. Now, High Gain Zero is something that I did feed Toby. It's very good feeding for laminitic horses. It's very low in their non-structural carbohydrates. Now, I think that the percentage is... now, once again, I'd have to go and look, but I can't remember. You have a percentage of non-structural carbohydrate level that you want to stay under. That's safe to feed laminitic horses. Feed XL will have that. If you pop a comment in the group and you want me to find out for you, I'll do that. What else can I tell you about laminitis? This is a Q&A laminitis section. I think that's it. So if you're in Australia, High Gain Zero is a very good feed. Soybeans, very good. Once they need a really good protein source. So horses that have had laminitis are going to have a compromised hoof wall. Quite often you'll see the rings in the hoof wall. That's a sign a horse may have foundered. They'll have a funny shape to their feet sometimes. So a really good protein source, such as extruded soybean meal, that is well cooked and has been known not to have what is it? There's something in soybean meal that you have to make sure is not active, because otherwise it can stop protein absorption. So a very good quality soybean meal that is cooked. I stick to reputable companies. I feed Pride's protein pack if you're in Australia. Yeah, so that is a Q&A on laminitis. If you've had issues with laminitis, or you have some in the future, I hope this helps. I hope this has been helpful and educational. I know it's something that just doesn't seem to be spoken about a lot when it comes to off the track thoroughbreds, because once again, and what I experienced with my Toby is I never really, I'd heard about it, but I never had any experience with it. And I do think it goes undiagnosed in racing, and even in horses out of racing. They can have a very low grade laminitis that is not diagnosed, and they're just not comfortable. So yeah, it's something to be aware of and to understand, and particularly if you're coming into your spring seasons, where you get the lush green grass, or you do feed grain. Just be really aware of it. So yeah, look, I hope that was really helpful. If you've commented, no comments have popped up here. So if you've commented, I apologize if I haven't got back to you, because it hasn't popped up. Yeah. Anyway, it's all a learning curve when you're a horsey person like me, and the world's turning digital, which is fantastic. I love I love the online lives and the Zooms, and all of this, Facebook groups and everything. I love it. I'm still learning myself, so be patient with me if yeah, bear with me if things go a little bit pear-shaped sometimes. But yeah, look, I just wanted to answer that question. And I'm just going back to this week's YouTube video. I popped in the group. It's on my YouTube channel. It's not about laminitis, but it is about observing your horse and being very diligent and observing their normal everyday behaviors, and picking up when they change. So when they're changing in behaviors, or they're showing behaviors that are abnormal or not something they usually do, take note of it. Don't ignore it. Quite often, people will be told by some trainers or their instructor or something, or the horse is just being naughty, push through it. That's not good advice. Take note of it. Better to stop. Don't push the horse. Think, okay, could there be something? Horses are always talking to us. They're always letting us know. They're telling us something. So if your horse is acting different than they normally do, take note of it, because they're telling you something's not right. Or if they're acting more calm and everything, something is right. So yep, just a little pointer there. Anyway, I will see you in the group. I will see you for next week's Q&A, and yeah, I'll see you in the group, and I'll talk then. Bye bye.